I never imagined I'd be in a position like this. But here I am, at 34 years old, a property owner with a small portfolio of homes in our hometown. It's not something that happened overnight. It took years of grinding, saving, and making sacrifices. I came from a modest background, and it wasn't always clear how we were going to get by. But I was determined to build something more for my family, to create a life that was a little bit better than the one I grew up with. My parents were both hardworking blue-collar folks. They worked tirelessly, often juggling multiple jobs just to make sure me and my siblings had everything we needed. They didn't have much, but they gave us all the love and support they could. One of the things I'll never forget is how my parents always dreamed of owning their own home, something they could call their own. But it was always out of reach. They just didn't have the resources, the luck, or the opportunities. That's what lit a fire in me. Seeing them work so hard but still struggle to get ahead, it gave me the ambition to create something more. I promised myself I wouldn't let the same things hold me back. I was going to make it for myself and for my future family. Fast forward to college, and that's where I met my wife. We clicked right away. We had so much in common, especially when it came to our backgrounds. She grew up in a single-parent household, with her mom doing everything she could to make ends meet. Her mom worked multiple jobs, just like mine, and she'd always preached the value of being financially savvy and making the most of what you had. Together, my wife and I had the same dream. We didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck like our parents had to. We wanted to build something more stable, something that would give our kids a better shot at life. So, we made a plan, and the journey began. We started small, flipping houses, saving every penny, and making careful investments. At times, it felt like we were never going to catch a break, but we kept at it. Slowly, over the years, we accumulated a few properties. Each one represented years of hard work, each one a reminder of the sacrifices we made and the dreams we were building together. Now, I'm a father to two wonderful kids, a son and a daughter. I couldn't be prouder of the life we've built. Those houses I own aren't just a source of income. They're a symbol of everything we've worked for, everything we've sacrificed. They're part of the future we're securing for our kids. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was how one person's entitled demand would soon turn my whole world upside down. It all started with Emily, one of my tenants. She's a 40-year-old single mother who had been renting one of my properties for a few years. She lives in a 3-bedroom house that I bought long before I got married. It's a nice place, located in a prime area near the high school, and I bought it because I wanted to be able to offer a comfortable home for someone who needed it. Emily was that someone. When I first found out about her situation, I knew I had to help. Her husband had left her shortly after their daughter was born, and she was raising her daughter alone. It wasn't easy for her, but she did her best to make sure her daughter had everything she needed. I could relate to her struggle, and I saw an opportunity to do something good. I offered her a subsidized rent to help ease her burden. I knew it meant I'd be losing some money on the deal, but that was okay with me. I wanted to help her out. For years, everything went smoothly. Emily was a reliable tenant. She always paid on time, and we developed a casual landlord-tenant relationship. Sometimes, we'd even chat when I'd stop by the house to check on things. Her daughter was getting older, and I could tell she was a smart, determined young woman. But a few months ago, things started to change. Emily came to me one day, and at first I thought it was just going to be about some minor repairs she needed for the house. But when we sat down, she started with a thank you. She told me how much she appreciated the help I'd given her over the years, especially when it came to the rent. Then, she dropped a bombshell. She told me her daughter, Lily, had been accepted into a prestigious out-of-state university. It was a huge deal. Any parent would be proud. But there was a catch. The tuition was sky high, and the scholarship Lily had gotten covered less than 10% of the fees. Emily had already done everything she could think of, applied for more financial aid, looked for scholarships, and even taken on a part-time job in addition to her full-time job. But it still wasn't enough. I nodded, understanding the struggle. I knew how expensive college could be, and I could see that she was really trying to make this work for her daughter. But what came next shocked me. "Would you consider selling the property?" she asked, looking me in the eye, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. I stared at her, speechless. "What?" I finally managed to say. "You want me to sell my house? For your daughter's college tuition?" Her eyes were full of desperation. She explained that the house I owned would fetch a lot of money, and she was confident it would cover all of Lily's college expenses. She said that if I sold it, I'd be doing something truly good, a noble act that would change the course of her daughter's future. At this point, I was struggling to stay calm. "Emily, are you out of your mind?" I asked, barely believing what I was hearing. This wasn't just a small favor. She was asking me to sell a property that I had worked my entire life to own. It wasn't just an asset, it was a symbol of everything I had fought for, everything I had sacrificed. I tried to explain to her that the property wasn't just something I could sell on a whim. It was part of my livelihood, part of my family's future. I couldn't just let go of it to pay for someone else's dreams. I told her that if she couldn't afford to send her daughter to that expensive university, she should explore other options. Maybe find a less expensive school or ask her family for help. There had to be other ways. But Emily wasn't hearing it. She was insistent. She even suggested that I could loan her the money, and when Lily graduated, she'd pay me back. As much as I understood the desire to help your child succeed, this was going too far. I couldn't just write her a check, and I certainly wasn't going to sell my house for it. Despite my firm response, Emily wasn't ready to back down. In fact, she ramped up the pressure. Every time I saw her, she would bring it up again. She even stopped paying her rent, thinking that maybe I'd change my mind if she protested enough. Our once friendly relationship was starting to break down, and the situation was becoming unbearable. It didn't stop there. Emily started telling everyone she could about our situation. She told neighbors and friends that I was being selfish, refusing to help a struggling single mother. She painted me as this wealthy villain who could easily help her daughter go to college, but just didn't care. The story quickly spread, and before I knew it, I was the villain of the neighborhood. And Emily wasn't done yet. She took to social media, sharing her story on Facebook. She wrote post after post, explaining how hard her daughter had worked, how much she deserved to go to this university, and how I was the one standing in the way. Soon, the whole neighborhood was buzzing with gossip, and people started to feel sorry for her. The impact was immediate. People who had once been friendly with us now looked at us with suspicion. They assumed that I had the money to help, but was refusing. It was like I was being punished for working hard to get where I am. My wife, feeling the weight of the tension in the community, decided to step in. She reached out to Emily, hoping to calm things down. But Emily wasn't interested in calm. She was more focused on her demands. She kept pushing my wife to convince me to sell the property, convinced that I could easily afford to do so. My wife tried her best to explain our side, but Emily wouldn't listen. The tension was mounting, and it was affecting our kids. My son and daughter started getting bullied at school. Their classmates would tease them about the things they'd heard on social media. My heart broke when I saw how much this was affecting them. That's when I decided enough was enough. It wasn't just about me anymore, it was about protecting my family, my reputation, and everything we had worked for. I couldn't let this go on any longer. So, I hired a lawyer who specialized in landlord-tenant disputes, and we sent Emily a cease and desist letter. When Emily received the letter, she was furious. She tried to reach out to me, but I ignored her calls. She sent me a text, apologizing for everything, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But by then, I was done. I told her I was taking her to court. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I couldn't let her continue spreading lies about me and my family. Now, I'm preparing for a legal battle. My lawyer is working on the case, and we're ready to take it to trial if we have to. Emily's actions have caused a lot of damage, and I'm not going to let her get away with it. Some of my relatives have suggested that I should give her another chance, considering her situation as a single mom. But I can't help but feel like I'm being attacked for doing the right thing. Am I the asshole for refusing to sell my property to fund her daughter's college fees? Maybe, but I'm not backing down. Not now, not ever. Update 1. After my last post, things really took a turn I wasn't expecting. Emily, as you probably guessed, didn't just accept the legal action I filed against her. Instead, she shot back with a letter of her own. And let me tell you, it was filled with even more threats, false accusations, and outrageous defamation. She went as far as accusing me of charging her an unfairly high rent, even though I knew about her financial struggles. According to her, my rent was the reason she couldn't save up for her daughter's education, something that, apparently, only I could fix. I honestly don't even know where to start. It's like she's completely lost touch with reality. The lengths she's going to, just to twist things in her favor, are mind-blowing. And what really gets under my skin is how she's trying to play the victim. All of this after I went out of my way to offer her subsidized rent, something most landlords would never even consider. It's frustrating. I've always prided myself on being understanding and reasonable, and I didn't want it to come to this. But Emily's accusations are completely baseless, and now it feels like I'm the one being attacked. It's like she's trying to manipulate the whole situation to get what she wants, and I'm just not going to let that happen. What really stings is seeing her try to make me out to be some greedy, heartless landlord when that couldn't be further from the truth. It's like she's turned the entire thing upside down. My lawyer, Matthew, keeps telling me that we've got a strong case. He's confident that her accusations will fall apart. But even though he's reassured me, I can't shake the feeling that this whole thing is going to be a long, draining process. He's right though. This isn't just about the money. It's about standing up for what's right and protecting what I've worked hard for. I never wanted to end up in a courtroom, especially not with a former tenant. But sometimes you've got to draw a line. I'm not going to let Emily pressure me into selling my property. I've worked too hard to let someone take advantage of me like this. My family's future is on the line, and I'm determined to see this through. I'll keep you updated once the legal proceedings officially begin. Update 2. So, the legal proceedings officially kicked off, and it's been a whirlwind. The anticipation leading up to the court date felt like an eternity. I couldn't even focus on anything else. It was always in the back of my mind. When we finally got to court, I could feel the tension in the air. Emily, with her lawyer beside her, painted this image of herself as a desperate, struggling mother just trying to make sure her daughter's dreams didn't slip away. Her attorney really played up her financial struggles, making it sound like the high rent I was charging was the sole reason her daughter couldn't go to that out-of-state university. They really made me out to be the bad guy, implying I was this wealthy, uncaring landlord who didn't care about a young girl's education. It was hard to sit there and listen to all the lies. Emily's testimony was emotional, with her wiping away fake tears as she described the hardships she'd faced. She talked about how hard she worked, how many hours she put in, and how she'd applied for every scholarship under the sun, but the rent was what ultimately kept her daughter from attending her dream school. She painted herself as this selfless mother who was willing to sacrifice everything for her child's future. But then, something happened that really threw me off guard. Emily introduced a so-called witness, a family friend of hers, who claimed to have overheard a conversation between me and Emily. According to this person, I had promised to sell my property to finance her daughter's education. I'm not sure what was worse, the fact that this person was lying in open court or the fact that Emily seemed so convinced it was true. I was absolutely stunned. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at how ridiculous the claim was. But what really threw me was that Emily seemed to think she had a solid case. She didn't even flinch when her family friend made that accusation. The whole thing was just completely fabricated. But of course, my attorney Matthew was ready for this. He immediately started questioning the family friend, asking about the time and place of the supposed conversation. The witness was all over the place, stumbling over details and couldn't remember anything concrete. They couldn't even explain when or where this conversation supposedly took place. They were just making it up as they went along. Matthew didn't stop there. He brought in solid proof to shoot down the entire story. He pulled out texts and emails between me and Emily from the period when this conversation was supposed to have happened. None of the texts even hinted at a promise to sell my property to fund her daughter's education. In fact, it was clear that Emily was the one pushing me to sell so she could get money to help her out. The whole thing was just a fabrication, and the witness's testimony crumbled under the pressure of the cross-examination. And it didn't stop there. We also had a neighbor testify that Emily had been paying less rent than all the other tenants in the area. This wasn't just hearsay. We had receipts from other tenants to back it up. Emily had been getting a deal, yet she had the nerve to act like she was being taken advantage of. Matthew presented all of this in a way that really made Emily's case look flimsy. The lack of any concrete evidence, combined with the neighbor's testimony, really painted a picture of someone who had fabricated a story for her own gain. Then came the part that really hit home. Emily had been slandering me online for months. My attorney presented a full record of her social media posts that accused me of being heartless and exploiting her situation. She'd painted this emotional narrative to get sympathy, portraying herself as the only one trying to help her daughter. In reality, she was just emotionally blackmailing me into doing something I didn't want to do. Matthew also introduced screenshots of social media comments and direct messages from people in the local community who had been influenced by Emily's lies. Some of them had started harassing me, thinking I was this evil landlord. The worst part was seeing how my kids were affected. Emily's false accusations had made their way into their school, and they were being bullied by classmates who had read her posts online. We presented testimony from my children, who explained how they had been directly impacted by Emily's lies. It was heartbreaking, to be honest. They had to deal with the fallout of someone else's actions. The bullying wasn't just about me. It affected my entire family. But as the evidence piled up, I started to feel more confident. We had the truth on our side, and it was becoming clear that Emily's manipulation was not going to win her this case. We were exposing her for who she really was. Update 3. After what felt like an eternity in court, the verdict finally came in. I can't even explain how relieved I felt when the judge ruled in my favor. The past month had been an emotional roller coaster, and all of that stress seemed to melt away in that moment. The judge saw through Emily's lies, and it was a huge weight off my shoulders. Emily was found guilty of defamation. Not only was she ordered to pay damages for the harm she caused to my reputation, but she also had to cover the rent she owed from the previous months. The cherry on top was the restraining order the judge issued, which prevents Emily from making any further defamatory statements about me or my family. I was honestly floored by the relief. I had never wanted this to escalate to the point of a court battle, but I couldn't just sit back and let Emily take everything from me. The ruling validated everything I'd been fighting for, and it showed that you can't just bully people into doing what you want, no matter how much you try to manipulate them. When I looked over at Emily, sitting there defeated next to her lawyer, I couldn't help but feel a bit of sadness. She had dug herself into a hole she couldn't climb out of. I turned my gaze toward her daughter, Lily, and a thought crossed my mind. This whole mess had completely messed up her chances. It wasn't her fault, but the collateral damage from her mother's sense of entitlement was undeniable. In the end, though, it was a lesson in standing your ground and defending what's rightfully yours. I could finally breathe easy, knowing my property and my family were safe. Update 4. 6 months have passed since the verdict, and things have settled down. The restraining order has kept Emily quiet, and she's long since been forced to take down her defamatory posts. The whole community saw the extent of her lies, and I think that's been the most powerful consequence of all. People now know the truth. As for Emily and Lily, they had to move out after I gave them the eviction notice. I'll admit, I felt some sympathy for Lily. She had so much potential, but her mother's actions had compromised her future in so many ways. Still, at the end of the day, Emily's choices put them both in a tough spot, and I couldn't let that affect my family's well-being any longer. Out of nowhere, I received a message from Lily. She apologized for everything that had happened, and I could tell that she was genuinely remorseful. She thanked me for my patience and for putting up with all the stress her mother had caused. She mentioned that they'd moved to a more affordable area, and she was now attending a local college to pursue her dreams. She also told me that she had talked to her mom after the trial, asking her to stop. Lily made it clear that she was determined to carve her own path, free from her mother's manipulations. It was a bittersweet moment, and I felt a sense of pride for her. I wished her the best of luck, knowing she was finally taking control of her life. It was a step in the right direction, and I felt like I could close the chapter on this painful ordeal. Now that Emily and Lily are no longer part of our lives, things have returned to normal. We've worked through the bullying my kids faced, and we're all stronger for it. It's been a difficult journey, but in the end, the truth came out. Update 5. It's been a year now, and I've had time to reflect on everything that happened. The court case, the emotional strain, the tension, it all feels like a distant memory, but one that still lingers in the background of my life. The worst part of it all wasn't just the accusations or the courtroom drama, it was what Emily's actions did to her own life. After the trial, I honestly thought I wouldn't hear much from her again. Her life was supposed to be over, at least in my world. I won, she lost, and that should have been the end of it. But, as it turns out, the real consequences of her actions weren't something she could escape so easily. Emily, after the judge's decision, tried to keep going like everything was normal. She'd made her threats, spread her lies, and in her mind, she thought she could just walk away from it. But the truth was that the damage to her reputation was irreversible. No matter how many times she tried to play the victim or post something new on social media, the public had already seen through her. She lost more than just the case. She lost her community. Friends and family members distanced themselves from her once they saw how far she had gone in her attempt to ruin someone else's life. I'm not saying she had it all good before, but it was a lot worse after the trial. Her lies were exposed for everyone to see, and no one was interested in sticking around to watch her self-destruct. The really heartbreaking part came months after the trial. I didn't expect to hear much about her. But then I got a call from someone I didn't expect, her daughter, Lily. Lily called to tell me something I never thought I'd hear. She said that her mom was struggling, more than anyone could have imagined. Emily had fallen into a deep depression after everything crumbled around her. The emotional toll of the trial, the accusations, the loss of her credibility, it was too much for her. Lily told me that her mother had even isolated herself from everyone, even her own daughter. I can't even begin to describe the weight that came with that conversation. Part of me felt a strange sense of guilt, but another part of me knew that Emily had done this to herself. She had chosen this path. She had pushed me into a corner, attacked me, and manipulated her way through a system she thought would protect her. In the end, it was her own actions that led her to this lonely place. Lily was at a crossroads, too. She didn't know how to help her mom. She was torn between wanting to support her mother and knowing that Emily's actions were the reason they were both in this mess. In the end, Lily did what she could. She stayed with Emily for a while, tried to get her into therapy, but it wasn't enough. Emily was too far gone. And then the final blow came. Emily tried to start over in a new town, somewhere far away, hoping that a fresh start would somehow fix everything. But by then, the damage was already done. She was a broken woman. Her lies had haunted her wherever she went. People didn't trust her. Her name had become synonymous with deceit, and no one wanted to get involved with someone who had caused so much harm. Not long after moving to that new place, Emily overdosed. It was a shocking turn of events, but when I heard about it, I wasn't as surprised as I probably should have been. She'd been spiraling for months, and I think a part of her had known that her actions had led her to this point. The tragedy of it all is that, in the end, no one was left to grieve for her. There were no family members at her funeral, no outpouring of sympathy. Lily was there, of course, but she was surrounded by strangers, people who didn't know Emily before everything went wrong. Emily had pushed away everyone who might have loved her, and in the end, she had no one. I'll admit, there was a small part of me that felt sad about it all. No one deserves to end their life like that, not even someone who did what Emily did. But it was also a reminder that the consequences of our actions have a way of catching up with us. And sometimes, when you push too hard, when you take things too far, there's no coming back from it. I still think about Lily. She's doing better now, from what I hear. She's working hard to put herself through school, to carve out a future separate from the mess her mother created. I hope she's found some peace, because she deserves it. As for me, things have finally returned to normal. The weight of everything that happened is lessened, and I'm at a place now where I can breathe without the constant worry that Emily might pop back into my life with more lies. I've taken the lessons from all of this and moved forward, focusing on my family and the things that truly matter. But I'll never forget what happened with Emily. I'll never forget how close I came to losing everything and how she almost destroyed my life just to get what she wanted. In the end, she destroyed her own. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit notification bell to stay updated.